Welcome one and welcome all to the greatest show of them all. It is the Blogging the Boys Roundtable. It's 8:02 p.m. Central Standard Time, Tuesday, March the 12th, 2024. We are live on the Blogging the Boys Tube of You channel, as well as the Blogging the Boys Twitch channel, as well as on the Book of Faces. Like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and is it subscribe, like, whatever it is on Twitch. So you don't miss anything that we do. We have live shows happening all the time, including every other Tuesday night here in the off season, although it is a busy time of year. So we are back after last week's show. You can read, listen, hear, smell the people that you're going to talk to or hear from tonight on the Blogging the Boys Roundtable all throughout the Blogging the Boys universe. If you're watching live, we're going to go in clockwise order, whether you're watching live or at your own pace. My name is RJ Ochoa. You know me from all throughout the Blogging the Boys universe, from Tuesdays, the Writers Block, and from really everywhere else. One of the more popular Instagram accounts out there, Dallas Cowboys Squad. It is Chris Halling. Chris, you're really going through it right now, my man.
I am going through it. Yeah. I don't want to say that I was one of those fans that completely drank the Kool-Aid when it came to the all-in comments, but
You were.
Okay, but listen, I was a little bit, excited, and I was falsely excited. I shouldn't have been excited because it's been nothing but sadness since free agency has begun.
I think that the three of us would testify that you not only drank it, Chris, you tapped the keg, and you were passing out cups to anybody who would kind of buy in. One of those glasses belongs to Danny Phantom, who has indeed brought a glass to tonight's show. Danny, I won't tell anybody what is in that glass. No free ads around here, but I trust that it has got you well lubricated for the moment.
Sure. I mean, honestly, I was well lubricated before because I've been waiting for this to hang with you guys and to talk about the topics that I'm sure we're all going to agree on.
Well, you did pick up 5 points already from David Smith for the brewski. Brewski, not a commonly typed out word. It's a word that people say out loud, but they don't really type. So I would throw 5 points back David's way. Tony Catalina, the tardy student tonight. You are normally the first person here, but you were last. What do you think that does to your chances for tonight's roundtable? And you are kind of in between Chris and Danny, I would say, as far as overall vibes.
Yeah, I mean, well, me being late, no excuse for that. I'm not an excuse maker. But what I will say, I think there is a really good balance between the three of us plus you, the host. I think the listeners are gonna be in for a treat today.
So it's the middle of free agency, however you want to qualify that. Legal tampering period. The new league year hasn't technically begun. It's actually new league year's eve, so it's appropriate that you brought something to drink, Danny. I guess maybe we'll get some. I don't know what they're called. A little. I guess noisemakers. Is that the proper name? Does anybody know?
That sounds right.
I mean, I thought that they would have a more specific name, but whatever. So happy New Year's New League Year's Eve to everybody. It's a difficult thing to say. David Howman is here in the chat, says giving 5 points to my awesome co-host Chris because he needs it in these dark times. And David Smith has thrown Howman 5 points for lurking. So let's just kind of get to it. The comments are already off and running. This has gone as expected for the Dallas Cowboys. I think that's important. We don't have to sit here and say like, oh my gosh, we're all super shocked, except for Chris, maybe who bought into the all-in line. The Dallas Cowboys, as of Tuesday at 8 o'clock Central Time, have not added anybody in free agency. They have brought back Trent Sieg, so good for them. But they are really, really, really trailing everybody else. Now we have, for you, purely by coincidence, loyal audience, a representative from each of the primary emotions along the spectrum. We have, if anybody's familiar with the like chaotic good or neutral good or chaotic evil meme or whatever, I would say, Chris, you're kind of the chaotic panic right now. You are definitely the sky is falling. I hate this team, et cetera, et cetera. Danny, you are the reserved, unshaken. Who was the actor in Twister? Somebody help me out here.
Bill Paxton.
Thank you very much. You are Bill Paxton with Helen Hunt, tied with the leather belt to the pipe, not shaken even by being in the middle, the eye of the storm. And Tony Catalina, you fall somewhere in between. You're a fence rider. And that's okay as it relates to this particular subject because you're allowed to feel a number of different ways. So, Tony, I think it's important to start with you because you're not too hot. You're not too cold. Let's just kind of dive right in. Describe your thoughts so far on free agency in 3 words. And we definitely want to hear from the chat as well.
I will say it's a little frustrating, right? I can understand where Chris stands in the sense that he wanted to see some things. I think a lot of people were bought into the all in, whether that was real or not. We obviously know now it wasn't a real thing, but just to having that little bit of hope is something I think a lot of fan bases in every sport will love to have. But ultimately, it's a familiar situation that we're all used to seeing here. So I will say I'm a little frustrated because me and Danny have gone back and forth on this on social media. I don't want an overhaul on philosophical changes here. I like what they do in the draft. I really do respect what they do and value how they approach things. I look at what they've done, and yeah, they've been good, but is it been good enough? I don't think anybody would confuse that at this point. So for me, it's really hard to sit here and say I'm totally bought into what they're doing, and all of the things that they've done at this point is, without question, right? They haven't earned my undying loyalty at this point because, it's been almost 30 years since we've seen a Super Bowl. It's almost 30 years since we've even been to an NFC Championship game. So I'm at the point now where, yeah, you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but let's do a little bit different here. So I think that's where the fence riding comes in.
So it sounds like, Tony, and tell me if I'm wrong, if you had to pick a side, you are leaning Chris's direction. Team panic over team chill.
I'm a little bit more in the frustrated side than I think my friend Danny here is.
Okay, Chris, let's start with you. Danny Solorio, I hope I'm getting that pronunciation correctly, on the book says all in, more like all out. You have voiced your frustrations with the Cowboys, not just on social media, not just in the articles that you've penned at the site, but also in our Blog on the Boys Slack channel. Thank you all for blowing up my notifications earlier this afternoon. And also thank you, Chris, for being the only one who said, I'm actually going to stop because I'm going to save it for the roundtable. So you did save it. Unleash. How are you feeling? All out, whatever's on your mind.
Yeah. So the Cowboys came into free agency with a few holes. They needed to address the run game. They needed to, bring in some more defensive tackle help. They needed to bring in some more linebacker help. And I feel like they needed to, try and find a replacement for Michael Gallup because, Michael Gallup's likely not going to be on the roster next year. And we're through almost second day of free agency, and all the above average, it feels like, options are almost gone. All those really appealing options are gone. And, it's frustrating because, there's a lot of players who the Cowboys could have signed to, I feel like, good contracts. And, maybe they viewed it as too much, obviously, with the whole Zach Moss situation. But with the Vikings signing Jones to a 1-year, $7 million contract, that just feels like something that the Cowboys definitely should have matched. I don't think that that's an outrageous deal, and it's especially just 1 year. If you're really trying to, compete and be all in, like you say, like, I feel like that's kind of a move that you're trying to make right now to be competitive in the present time. And it just feels like the Cowboys have lost a lot more than they've gained since they've lost, 3 productive players, or four productive players, and 3 of them have gone to the Washington Commanders, and they haven't added anyone in return. And it just feels like now that time to add more talent is almost starting to run out. And the Cowboys haven't really restructured any deals other than the Zach Martin one. They're not freeing up cap space, and things just don't look good right now.
So Danny, my card's on the table. I'm maybe a little bit closer to Chris than Tony. I'm really upset with the Cowboys. My level of upsetness has nothing to do with the all-in line. Like I think all of us, except for Chris, I never bought into that. I will say I am upset about it, even though I never believed it to be authentic. Because if people call Jerry things like snake oil salesman, whatever, if that was ever applicable, it was applicable to that. Like, Jerry absolutely knew what he was doing when he said that. He knew that they were not going to be that way in free agency. So at the very least, it was kind of mean to do to a very loyal fan base, at least people like us. But that's neither here nor there. I'm not saying that the Cowboys had to go out and sign Derrick Henry. I'm not saying that the Cowboys had to do, the most in free agency, make this massive trade, but that they are completely and totally an outlier relative to the rest of the NFL is an incredible level of arrogance at best in my mind. And I don't know how they can possibly justify it, but you think that they can, Danny. And I say that seriously because the floor is now yours.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they can justify it because, free agency is a house game. It doesn't mean that you can't get lucky and can't hit on it. But it's a statistically bad way to spend your resources. So, I mean, to me, I don't know if I've ever been more supportive of the front office in the way they behave. I'm embracing this whole thing because obviously I'm conditioned to it. I know how the Cowboys behave, but I was a little bit worried going into this particular offseason because this is a true statement. Their roster is going to be worse than it was last year, and everybody's upset about that. And I don't know what to say. I mean, this is the kind of the path we were traveling down. So I was a little worried that they were going to start to maybe panic a little bit and maybe there was a little truth to Jerry's all in, and they'll start to do a little more of those bad free agency moves. So I'm glad. What I'm seeing. This is fantastic for me. I believe in this front office. I know there's a process that they follow, and that they have reasons that they don't spend this kind of money because they have other things they want to take care of, and those other things are pretty good. And fans, they judge that because of the results. And if you're going to do that, then I guess you can just pick any part of this organization and say they're not good enough. If you want to do that, fine. But when it comes to roster building, I have no doubt that this Cowboys team is above average, if not one of the upper teams in doing it. I mean, there's a reason that Will McClay is coveted every year. They're trying to talk him out of coming. I mean, it's not because the Cowboys are just running amok, not knowing what they're doing. So absolutely, I'm sold on this. I'm at the total end. I'm not even close to these guys. The Cowboys are doing exactly what I want them to do.
So I want to say that I think what happens in these arguments, and certainly online, is that we take zero truth. Like, people say like, oh, Danny, like what you said, there's zero truth to what you said. I don't think I don't agree with all of it, but I certainly agree with a lot of it. I will say, Tony, that I think that we're maybe gassing up Will McClay a little bit too much, and we kind of have been for some time. Everybody has pointed out, obviously, the draft class of last year, pretty trash, right? Like there's, at least now, right? Like there's a lot of time. We don't need to, write the obituary yet. I would offer the 2022 Dallas Cowboys draft class. Tyler Smith, awesome, right? There's no doubt about it. Sam Williams, do we feel awesome about it? Like, do we feel incredibly comfortable with their second-round draft pick from just 2 years ago? Do we feel incredibly comfortable with their third-round draft pick from 2 years ago in Jalen Tolbert? You mentioned, Chris, obviously the Cowboys need to find a replacement for Michael Gallup because none of us feel confident that can be Jalen Tolbert right now. And look, I'm not going to poke holes because they also drafted Jake Ferguson. They also drafted Deron Bland. But if you're telling me we have to rely on Will McClay being able to look under every stone and find dudes in the 4th and 5th round because we know the Cowboys are going to miss in the second round, I feel like we may be overestimating the ability to draft, Tony. And even if they can draft, Tony, even if they can knock every pick out of the park, they simply do not have enough resources from a quantitative standpoint to match up all of their needs relative to what they've lost in free agency and the way their roster is kind of shaping out towards the future.
Right. And I think to add further to that, when you put so much emphasis on the draft, when you have a draft like we project 2023 to possibly look like, where it wasn't great, doesn't that set you back further than a regular team would? So now you're chasing it in 2024.
You're like double drafting because you didn't use free agency, right?
100%. And I would agree that Will McClay does a good job. When Danny said, I mean, there's no doubt that he does a quality job, probably better than most in what he is asked to do when it comes to the draft. But I think where Will McClay is more valuable is probably somewhere anywhere other than here. And I mean that to say, get a front office who is not afraid to take a chance in free agency, add a Will McClay to the front office who is good at drafting and finds a good way to get teams to the draft. And now you're really cooking with a team that is using all of their resources. So for the Cowboys, they almost kind of say, hey, Will McClay, if we have more 2023 drafts where, and again, it's too early to end it right now, but at the same time, with a zero impact rookie class, you have too many of those stack up, and you're really in a significant hole because this whole team tells us, this whole front office tells us that's how they want to build it, and when it's right, it's right. And to another point to Danny is, yes, it's a house game to play free agency, but I think the success rate isn't like that great or that much more in the draft. It's just cheaper to do it. So yeah, I think the yards aren't crazy different. It's just deciding to play with $5 chips instead of $25 chips. And at the same time, hey, you might win a few hands, but it's going to take you longer to get to where you want to go if that goal is $100.
To live within the gambling analogy, Danny, I think Chris would agree with you too that it is a game designed for the house to win free agency in terms of the likelihood of a positive return on investment is really, really, really low, especially in the early waves of free agency. However, if you do view it from a gambling perspective, the Cowboys are completely in control of when to walk away. Like they don't have to sit down and burn through their entire chip stack. And I think that's where the frustration is starting to lie and really starting to percolate from. Nobody's saying that you have to literally go all in, even though, again, it's kind of ironic that was the phrase that kind of kickstarted this whole thing. But you can sit down and you can play some serious hands. Like you're not going to go broke if you lose 10% of your chip stack. And guess what? You might win a hand, and you can win one hand and walk away. But the Cowboys, 12 years ago, they lost one hand and they've been afraid to sit down at the table ever since. And so there was a comment a moment ago from, let's see here, I'm scrolling up to try to get it, from David Smith that says, not adding a difference makers in free agency is like fighting with one hand behind your back. Even if we view the Cowboys drafting ability to be this, like if they might have the best right uppercut in the game, but they have a left hand. Like why purposefully forego one avenue of team building when everyone else utilizes it to a degree that is larger than this team?
Yeah, that is an absolutely great question, RJ. And I have what I hope is a great answer. Because there's two big reasons. Well, there's several reasons. I'll try to touch on the one I think is the most important. First off, house game, you're bound to lose. It's not poker. Poker they play. They're in the draft. They outdo other people. They get better players.
No, totally agree. That was your analogy. I don't want credit for it. You coined that.
But playing a house game with free agency when there's statistical evidence, overwhelming statistical evidence that it's a bad investment, they don't. They try to minimize that. And honestly, the things they do when you look at the curses and the hookers and all the players, they actually get more value out of players. So I think that they do that pretty good. Now, when they try to do other stuff and they try to get cute, there's history where they're not so good. Now, I don't know when the Will McClay era started taking over, like maybe they would be better at it now than they were earlier when they were making, like everybody else, and making bad decisions. I don't know. But I don't want the Cowboys to spend resources where I've seen that they're not good at, and that's going to take away from things that they are good at. And the Cowboys, there's a lot of elements to it. We're talking about paying their superstars, and they have a good handful of those guys, and they're bringing back players, and they're affording to be able to play, Cooks and Gilmore. They're here because the Cowboys are using some of the resources to make those trades. So the Cowboys are doing a lot of those things well, and we're going to look at the one element that's known to just be bad, for your roster building, and the fact that they do not participate in that, and then start judging them like they're out of their minds. I mean, we all want them to make good free agent decisions, but we don't know that if they did it, they would even make good decisions.
But we don't know that because they don't make any. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like we can't. I don't know if this is your point, but if it is, you're right that we would kill them if they whiffed in free agency. But like their unwillingness to try is cowardice at the worst. To that point, Chris, if the Cowboys had at this point extended Dak Prescott, extended CeeDee Lamb, extended Micah Parsons, retained Tyron Smith, whatever, if there had been something to show for their work, if they had some answers on the paper, I think we'd be forgiving to a slight degree. We'd be willing to say they've done this. But the fact that they haven't done anything really, it doesn't help this case. It doesn't help this cause, especially when all of their important contracts, and I wouldn't say all, but most of the recent contracts in recent history, they allow to reach the 11th hour. They let that happen with DeMarcus Lawrence twice. They obviously have let that happen with Dak Prescott multiple times. They were pushed into that situation by Zeke Elliott. The only deals that they've gotten ahead on, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, earlier than anticipated, where they have tried to gauge and read the market, were Jalen Smith, an off-ball linebacker, Zeke Elliott, a running back, after committing the 4th overall pick to him, and I will give them credit on Trayvon Diggs last year. But other than that, Chris, they drag their feet and they wind up paying more, so they're not even doing that part of roster construction correctly.
I 100% agree with you. I think that if they had at least addressed one of those issues, I think that we would maybe be viewing this a little bit differently. And, back to, Danny's point where he's talking about how we're criticizing them for not being aggressive in free agency, but they still do these other things well, it's because we're seeing our biggest division rival in the Philadelphia Eagles consistently be aggressive in free agency. And I'm not necessarily saying that, signing Saquon Barkley to $13 million a year is the smartest decision, but the Philadelphia, they have a reputation for being very aggressive in free agency, and the Eagles have made the Super Bowl twice since 2018, and they won one of those, and they're consistently competitive, and they're going deeper in the playoffs. And, I think at some point you have to look at what the Cowboys are doing and what they've done and what they have to show for it. And, 12-5 seasons are great. It's cool that they're consistently up there, but, it's not getting the job done. And to me, it's like, when are they going to, kind of wake up and try a different approach? And it just feels like now, I mean, I don't want to say the championship window is closing, because, if they still have Micah Parsons, who I think is the best defensive player in the NFL, and they're still going to have CeeDee Lamb and a great, cornerback duo. But I think that as of right now, this is looking like it's going to be one of the worst teams that the Cowboys have had on paper over the last couple years. And, it's just not very comfortable to see that, because, with Mike McCarthy, coaching on the final year of his contract, with Dak Prescott still needing to be extended, with, Mike Zimmer being on a 1-year deal. There's just a lot of question marks, and the Cowboys haven't, really addressed anywhere. They haven't addressed it in a way that I think the Cowboys should have any faith that they're going to, go further than they did this past season. And I think that this past season was I think last season was an obvious disappointment as well in the playoffs. So,
Danny, you are a bit of a cinephile. The latest episode of the Star Seminar featured you and Rabble taking a twist on what were then upcoming Oscars that we saw this past Sunday. Have you seen The 40-Year-Old Virgin? An incredible film.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
so I'm stealing this from friend of Blog on the Boys, Bobby Belt, and I've referenced it many times. Bobby from NFL Network and 105 to the Fan. There's a scene in The 40-Year-Old Virgin, for anyone who has. Chris, Tony, you've seen the movie, I trust. Okay, there's a scene where one of Steve Carell's, anybody remember his name in the movie? I don't, off the top of my head, but whatever. Steve Carell's character, let's just call him Steve. He's being consulted by his coworkers, his friends, on how to have success in a particular area, and he's being given a piece of advice. And Steve, Danny, says, I just don't feel comfortable doing that. It doesn't feel right. And the coworker says, right kind of hasn't been working for you, dude. Maybe it's time to try some wrong. And I look at the way, and there were a lot of comments earlier in the chat about the running back market. And I don't think anybody was able to anticipate the way the running back market, I don't even want to call it blew up. There was the extra salary cap money. There's the fact that the draft class obviously is not anticipated to be, particularly deep at the position. But even the Philadelphia Eagles, who we all acknowledge have an incredibly forward-thinking front office, they tried some wrong, Daddy. They said, you know what, let's try it. And I think it's definitely an overpay. There's no way that Saquon Barkley provides a positive return on investment, but they're willing to try it because what they've been doing, the right that they're accustomed to, is not enough in their estimation. And I think that that's the overall kind of philosophy that we would like to see the Cowboys, be willing to entertain, as opposed to their right way.
No.
Cool.
It's like this, RJ. It's like when you do something and you have a bunch of different elements to it, and the results are not successful, you're obviously going to take a step back and like, okay, what went wrong? But you're not going to like throw away the good parts. Nobody's
saying to throw away the good parts. We're asking you to add other parts.
You're asking for a little bit of wrong. That's what you're asking.
Well, it's a generality. But what have they done that has costed us the ability to explore what they define to be this wrong? I mean, what is the thing that they're doing that they could say we're not active for this reason? I mean, point to the evidence, the tangible piece of evidence that we can look at right now.
So you're asking them, why are they avoiding it? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, they've avoided it year after year after year after year, and there is nothing, again, that they can point to in our current moment to suggest or to outright prove this is why we're not active in free agency. You see this bright, shiny new extension for pick your favorite current Cowboy whose jersey you own. That's why we were busy working on that. There's nothing that they have to show for the work of this offseason so far. All they have done since being humiliated in the playoffs is get worse and show no desire to get better.
Yeah, but you know what? They believe in the players they have. They're paying the players they have, and they think that they can be competitive with this approach, and they are. We are really excited, but none of us, not any single one of us, thought we were going to go into Green Bay and like, oh, you know what? We're just not as good as they are. We're in trouble. because we got some problems with in the middle of the defensive line. Our linebackers are a little bit lean. We're going to get beat by this better team. They just got more talent. None of us thought that. We believed in the talent of this team. In fact, people were overexcited about where this team could go. So it's not a talent issue.
But isn't that representative that what they define to be the right way of thinking is in fact wrong? The fact that we were all, themselves included, so unbelievably wrong on the situation?
I don't know that we were. I think that they had holes and they could be better, but I really think that the talent on this team is good, and I don't understand. People are upset about it. You got to really think about why. Why are you upset about it? It's not because of the talent. The Cowboys do a really good job of bringing in talent and developing talent. And you asking them to go and make those mistakes, it's going to have a price. And you may say, well, you know what, the cap's not a real thing or whatever. It is. The Cowboys, the way they operate, they are going to budget because they're not going to risk 2027 for 2024.
Why are you so worried about 2027 and 2024?
I'm not. They are.
That's what we're saying is wrong.
Problem,
and Tony, I know you raised your hand, but I do want to say one thing quickly. If they had acted in a forward-thinking way at any point in the Dak Prescott era from a free agency perspective, I would be willing to kind of walk this line at this point in time. I would be willing to kind of look back and trust that. It's easy to look at teams like the Houston Texans now because they have a rookie quarterback contract and be jealous of that situation. They did not do that. At no point have they pressed, Tony. At no point have they said, this is the window to spend big money. We're going to do it every year, regardless of the circumstances. It has been conservative. But you did raise your hand. So what do you have to say?
Yeah, I mean, nothing I was going to say was all that great. I was just going to say,
it's great. Everything you say is great. Your words are beautiful.
Don't let good be the enemy of great, right? Like, yeah, it's been good. It's been good. Like, yeah, we're solid. We're in the race. We're a good team, and we're happy with being 36-15. But we get our doors blown off by Green Bay. 49ers were not even in the same realm. And, it doesn't matter what the situation is. We seem to fold. And that's the problem, right? Like, I can't get over the fact that, like, it just feels like an overwhelming comfortability from the way this front office is built, where there's no fire underneath them, right? Jerry Jones isn't going to let himself go. Stephen Jones is comfortable in his role. Like, all these people have no desire to really go for the gusto. Like you said, the Houston Texans, they can do stuff. And I know they get lucky with the quarterback but they haven't done any of that with Dak Prescott. And they've built in an excuse for themselves where if it works, they were right. If they were wrong, they can say it was the quarterback, and they can say that they put pieces around him, and they say the look of the way we're building, the look the way we're drafting. At no single point in time have they been able to look in the mirror and be like, yeah, man, maybe we could have did more. The only time I've ever heard Jerry say that was that he wished he got Romo a Super Bowl. And I'm like, how about now? How about right now with the guy you got right this minute?
To that point, the sins of the past have taught them nothing. They have it, except for Brandon Carr. That is the only lesson that they will stick to and that they have seemingly ever learned any kind of lesson from. Chris, it is no question that everybody is mad, yourself included. I don't normally put a lot of stock into things like what Tony just said. People love, no offense, Tony, people love to say things like the Joneses don't care about winning and they only care about being relevant and they only care about making money. I find all those things to be kind of silly and kind of ridiculous and generally just kind of, being a victim of the moment. It is so difficult. It is in the time I've been doing this, whatever you want to call this world, it is as difficult as it has ever been to diffuse that idea. It is as difficult as it has ever been to prove that to be false. I'm not saying that it's 100% true, but I'm having a very, very, very difficult time, a more difficult time than I ever have, proving it to be false.
Yeah, it's very difficult to prove that false because, like Danny's talking about all this talent that, the Cowboys have on their team. They're losing a lot of the talent and they're not doing anything to try and replace them right now. And, they still have more players who are free agents right now who could very well end up, joining other teams. There's been all this talk about how Tyron Smith may not be coming back and, Stephon Gilmore might not be coming back. And, there's more and more holes on this roster and the Cowboys aren't really being aggressive in, fixing those holes. And, we had holes from this past season that needed to be fixed as, at the linebacker position and the interior defensive line and even, being able to score more in the red zone. And now we're just adding more holes on top of that. And, that's happening right after the Cowboys front office said that they'd be more all in this year and they'd approach it in a different way. So it just feels like, it just feels like they're not, standing by, their words, and they're not actually
It feels
showing
like
what
they
their
lied,
actions.
and they lied on
Exactly.
purpose.
It
They
feels
they
like they
needed
lied.
something to say that day, and they said it,
It
and
feels like
they
they
didn't care about the
lied,
consequences.
Yeah. No, it feels like they lied for their own, brand's sake, and that's kind of the argument that a lot of, Cowboys fans bring up, that like they care more about their brand than what they do about winning. And I've always been, kind of with you, RJ. I've never really truly bought into that, because I think Jerry Jones truly, truly, truly cares, and I think he's one of the more caring owners in the NFL. And it's almost to a fault that he cares that much, because I think sometimes it would be better if he kind of stepped back and hired an actual GM and did things more of the traditional sense. But I don't think it's true to say that I previously haven't said that I think that it's true that the Cowboys care more about like their brand and their franchise than they do about the product on the football field. But their actions aren't backing that up right now. I mean, like, they aren't. No, I mean, like, they're not taking the fans seriously, and they're not going all in like they had previously said. And it just feels like they're saying a lot of things and they're not backing it up with their actions.
So, a couple comments I want to hit from KHY001. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in live. This is obviously a kind of a group therapy session. It says the Jones boys run the Cowboys franchise like an old town diner that hasn't updated. I think these are the words you meant. An old town diner that hasn't updated their menu in ages because the locals and the usuals still come in. That is incredibly accurate. Tony, you get the pancakes, I'll get the waffles. I'll give you half my stack. You give me half yours. We'll mix it up. We'll make a great plate. They'll bring us the peanut butter. We know exactly what the bill's going to be because we've been ordering it for 30 years. So that's kind of ridiculous. I agree with Kevin. And this is why I have a hard time agreeing with they only care about money thing. And Danny, I'll throw this to you. He says, I really think Jerry and Steven actually lack self-awareness. They believe they're smarter than everyone somehow, like they're outsmarting the rest of the league. There's a lot of people, Danny, in the situation that we have found ourselves in that believe, they're tanking, they're just folding on 2024, they're just going to go to 2025, they're going to reset with Mike McCarthy, with or without Mike McCarthy, without Dak, whatever. I don't find this to be true, but not for the reason that I think you might assume. I don't find this to be true because that would require a level of calculated thought and foresight that I think they are not capable of. I think that this is just who they are. I think they're just this bad at it. And you could call it bad. You can call it wanting to Sinatra style this and wanting to do it their way. I don't think that they have any clue about 2025 or 2027, to your point, except that they want to maintain as much salary cap space as possible and have as many compensatory picks as they can.
I think that is a really good comment, because I think the self-awareness thing was very true in the earlier parts of the Jerry Jones GM era at post Jimmy Johnson. But I think that he's changed a lot since then. And Will McClay is part of this front office too. So it's not just like this Jonesons are just doing things how they want. And these are decisions that Will McClay is doing as well. And I feel like, to me, when you look back at when he was doing those things, they didn't go well. And I don't know why fans are wanting to revert back to this. But honestly, for me, I think that what bothers me the most, and you mentioned that when they're negligent in as far as how they deal with their contracts, and I think that they've made more mistakes actually going a little early, because you could talk about the Jalen Smith was a little too early.
Totally.
And they actually do go on that route, actually seems to get them in more trouble. I think it's a good idea at the time, but it gets them in more trouble. I think the Cowboys actually go about things more right than people give them credit for. I just don't align with everybody wanting the Cowboys to take this approach. And I really don't know what to say. It's the Cowboys do a lot of good things with their roster building, and I don't want them to be doing those.
They can do both. Like, again, it isn't a one or the other. That's the position that we all hold. We're not saying to abandon the course of action that is to build primarily through the draft. But what we're saying is to maybe bend on that 5%, 10% in the name of exploring this other avenue of roster construction.
Yeah.
And so to be unwilling, I think, is to just have incredible tunnel vision.
I think that they did that a little bit in 2020, RJ, when McCarthy first came in.
I saw your tweet about this, and the quarterback got hurt. Like, we can't grade that season as a failure because of
no. But look at the players though. The players weren't good.
Joe McCoy got hurt in the first practice.
Okay.
Like, that was the big signing of the offseason. I mean,
Right.
And to your point, they properly protected themselves against that financially. They had that ridiculously specific clause about whatever it was. I forget the specific details now about if he got hurt, that they didn't owe him anything. So to your point, they did their due diligence because money was on the line.
Right. And they tried to spend a little more. They threw a lot of money at defensive tackle. They were trying to do a little more that season. Now, McCoy, this is what's going to happen when you invest in the veterans. Is the Cowboys usually like to go for cheap young guys. They spend a little more money and go for post 30 guys. And what happens? Players get hurt. So, I mean, I don't really know what it's going to take for Cowboy fans to be happy. I know what it's going to take. It's going to take them to do free agency and be correct. You're asking them to defy statistics.
You're acknowledging that 2020 was the most aggressive, whatever you want to call it, that they have been in free agency, right? And my point is that they can do both. Who were their first 2 draft picks in 2020?
It was Lamb and Diggs.
Okay, so did the misses on Gerald McCoy or Dontari Poe or HaHa Clinton Dix at all preclude them from drafting 2 cornerstone players a month later?
No.
Right. So what would be the huge concern in trying that now? And to the point at hand, they have had a lot of success in the 3 seasons following the misses that were Joe McCoy and Dontari Poe and HaHa Clinton Dix. Tony outlined they are 36-15 in that time since. It did not hold them back. They are not, paying for the sins of the contracts that they handed out to McCoy, Poe, or Clinton Dix. So it was one chance and a miss. What if it had hit in a larger sense? And they did hit, to your point, on the likes of Jaron Curse and Malik Hooker and things like that. But what if they hit, like Tony said, what if they got up off the $5 chip table and they played 2 hands at the $20 chip table? What if those hit in those larger situations? They could still find players like CeeDee Lamb and Trayvon Diggs in their first 2 picks of the draft.
Yeah, but would it even have mattered? Like, what would the Cowboys have done last year that would have helped them beat Green Bay?
See, you can't use like hypothetical processes to prove the point. Like, we don't know.
Why?
Like we don't know the same way you don't know.
I'm telling you,
we know that what they're doing is not enough, and that we know that they are a significant outlier. That's our issue with it. Our issue isn't, if they had signed X, Y, and Z, they wouldn't have lost to the Packers. Our issue is that they are the only team who seem to operate this way. Their track record with regards to it has nothing to do with it. But Tony, sorry, Danny, I don't mean to cut you off. I say all the time, Tony, that it is very, very, very difficult to get the entire internet to agree on something. Anything. Like what color the sky is can generate division on the internet. Now, we obviously don't have a consensus here. Danny feels one way. There are a lot of people who feel different ways. But the significant majority, Tony, of not just Dallas Cowboys fans, but like football fans on the internet are dragging the Joneses, are dragging the Cowboys. So it's either the Joneses and the small, minute percentage of people are the real right party here, and everyone else is just the biggest idiot on earth, or the 90% is right, and the 10% is so unwilling to budge on their way of thought.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I was just out to eat with my wife before this, and I looked at her over, a meal, and I was like, I don't know if I can remember a time where the fan base seemed so just flat. Disengaged, just so upset with everything. And like, yeah, there are a small percentage of people who are telling people like, oh, hang on, or whatever. There's a lot of pull up your bootstraps and be happy type of energy from some people, but the overwhelming majority is been frustration. It's been defeated. I mean, even myself included. Maybe I'm in the middle of the barometer here, where like I'm just at a show me, don't tell me. Like, I'm done with the exclaiming this team's going to be a championship team and they're the crop, and give me the 49ers and we'll beat the Packers. That stuff seems to be dissipating. And I know there's a little bit of the ebbs and the flows of every offseason, especially when, free agent comes and goes and they're the only team to not make a move, and you just get your doors kicked in by the Packers in the first round of the playoffs. And so, yeah, I expect that it'll eventually rise, and, people will be drinking Kool-Aid as we get closer to July. But this, you're right. The overwhelming majority in that I can remember, this feels like the most defeated I've felt and seen the fan base. And I think the commenters would probably agree.
Chris, I know you raised your hand, but Daniel says we're not asking for 10 signings. We're asking for 1 to 3 signings to fix our holes. You want to sign everybody, Chris, so this doesn't apply to you. But I do think you would be okay with this. Like, it's the complete lack of activity for the 12th year in a row, generally speaking, that we're upset with.
Yeah, no, I don't, I don't think that they need to go out and sign every single free agent. I know that I kind of, latch on to everyone who becomes available. And I'm like, hey, Cowboys need to go get this person. But I mean, I was saying earlier, I think that, honestly, I feel bad for the first outside free agent that the Cowboys are going to sign, because like he could be a very quality role player. It could be a good, player who we bring in, and it won't matter because the fans are so flat right now, and they're going to reject him, not because of the player that he is, but because what the front office has done by their comments and, with their way of, working right now. And I just, yeah, I mean, like they don't have to go sign everyone, but I mean, like you had a clear red zone problem and a power back problem. So honestly, I don't think that paying $8 million a year for Derrick Henry was that crazy, especially on a 2-year deal. Like, I don't think that that's a high risk move for the Baltimore Ravens at all, who are trying to win right now. And I think that the Cowboys would have been smart to do that deal. And I know I was pounding for Derrick Henry even, at the trade deadline. So, I mean, like I obviously am a little biased, but I just see these deals going out to these players and I'm like, the Cowboys couldn't have restructured like one contract and made that happen. And like a lot of people are talking about, money and, cap space. The Miami Dolphins came into this, free agency with less cap space than the Dallas Cowboys, and they've signed 4 outside free agents. Granted, they've lost players as well, but I mean, it just seems like the Cowboys aren't even trying, and like it's just hard to sit back and watch that as. I feel like every other team in the NFC East are making like really aggressive moves to try and get better. I mean, like that New York Giants defensive line looks really good now with Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns. And then you have the, Washington Commanders taking a lot of our, players, but they also are going to have a good draft pick, and they're going to, bring in a quarterback, and they're going to have a pretty solid team around them, I think. And then the Philadelphia Eagles, who really had an epic collapse and should have won the division this past season, they are just adding more star power to their team. And it just feels like the Cowboys aren't even trying to get better. And I think that that's what's really frustrating.
An update on the score. Chris, you said it's 60 points. Danny and Tony tied at 61. So a close battle here tonight on the roundtable. Danny, I like this comment from Casey. And to be clear, I think we all agree. Says, I'd argue that the moves we made last offseason for Gillian Cooks were at least moderately aggressive. In my book, that paid off. Again, I think we would all agree with that. Kind of nuts. They would dial the aggression back to a 0 again. We all sang their songs. We all gave them their flowers. We even said, wow, kudos, respect. You are not normally a team that does things like this. You were a little bit more aggressive. You were a little bit creative. You turned these 5th-round draft picks into tried, true, proven veteran players. That's, again, Danny, we're not saying it. Chris is saying it had to be Derrick Henry. Tony and I are saying it had to be Derrick Henry, but that's why I'm like, for you to say you're not even budged off of one end of the spectrum, and maybe that's just an expression. Like, I just can't believe that you wouldn't prefer that they have done something by now, that you're completely fine with all of the passivity.
I am. I am to this point. I mean, I won't be fine if it continues, but I don't want to be a part of this first wave of free agency. To me, I feel like, you look at the Derrick Henry thing, and I mean, so I'm wearing a Marion Barber jersey, by the way, to in honor of overpaying a running back, and that's what's going on right now. And I think this is what frustrates me about a lot of Cowboy fans, is we really gave it to the Joneses for how they handled the Ezekiel Elliott and all the money they did. And even last year with Pollard, that was an overpay. And all of a sudden, everybody who hated that move are just like turn around and they're wanting to sign this guy and that guy. And, and people are applauding that Saquon Barkley trade. It's like, or signing. It's like, what's going on? I mean, I just feel like they just want to be mad. And it's like, if the Cowboys aren't doing it, they just want to be angry. And then we're talking about Washington and the Giants, and we're fearful of
we are. Okay, why are you acting like we're above being fearful of them? Like that?
Because we've done this show before. I've seen how it ends.
I mean, that's you're using only the sample size that you want to prove your point. Like the idea that they can't, pull themselves. Like, Danny, you're the biggest Dan Quinn fan here of all 4 of us. And so the idea that Dan Quinn can't show up to Washington and coach them to be a legitimate team now all of a sudden is a joke?
No, it's not. Absolutely, a team can. And a team will. There will be a team that's like, boy, they did a great job in free agency. Okay, but there is an overwhelming sample size where teams that go out there and they spend and they get those good free agent grades and they're winners and stuff, and then they suck. And the reason is because they're doing that to fill the deficiencies that they have as an organization. This has just been going on for a long time. That's why I can say that. Now, I mean, Will Washington in New York, get better? Maybe. I mean, they've been terrible.
I don't know how you can say like it's a maybe thing, but like guarantee these things for the Cowboys. That you can guarantee that they're going to be successful in the draft, but like it's a 50-50 proposition for these other teams.
Well, I can say it because I was expecting the Giants and Washington to be better from the last time they did this, and they didn't. That's why I say that. I don't know. Maybe they will. I mean, the Giants I thought were trending in the right direction. I don't know, but I do know this is teams that they throw a lot of money at free agency, and it's usually the same teams going through the cycle, and that's because they got this cap space because they're not paying any of their own talent that they drafted because they can't do it. So I don't know why I would be excited about a team that just goes up there and they're just spending a bunch of extra money on players that are going to underperform the contract in general, and be excited about that. It's free agency is a scam. It's like getting the car warranty thing. It's going to help someone, but it's overall you're getting hosed. So I'm not going to be excited about that. I mean, Cowboys will do something. They'll sign small deals and they'll be low risk. And some of them will not even make the roster. But I don't know. This is what they're going to do. If you're going to be upset about it, just try to take a step back and think. We got CeeDee Lamb. We have Dak Prescott. We have
They got CeeDee Lamb in the free agency period that you killed them for. Like they did both. Like it both can be true. They can do both things at the same time. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Tony,
you have to pay people. You have to pay people.
Yeah, so I think this is the part of the free agency thing that's super frustrating, and having a unilateral plan every single year and not deviating off of that. If you look at it, and you said it, RJ, yourself, this is an unusual running back market, right? Last year, nobody was spending any money on running backs. This year, they're throwing money at Saquon Barkley. DeAndre Swift signs in the first 2 minutes to Chicago Bears. People are going left and right, Derrick Henry, whatever, Aaron Jones, etc. I think what the part that some people within Cowboys fans, and I'm not necessarily blaming or saying Danny is in this boat, but I don't think people are understanding the leverage that the draft is a part of the free agency plan here. Look at the wide receivers, barely moved. Running backs, they're flying off the charts. Wide receivers, barely moved. Offensive tackles, like none have been signed. If you look at it, tackles are a strength in the draft. Wide receivers are a strength in the draft. Running back is not a strength in the draft. These are teams who are understanding the draft probably on the same level, if not more than the Cowboys, and understanding, okay, this isn't going to be a strong running back draft. Let me go get Josh Jacobs. Okay, this is going to be a strong tackle. Tyron Smith's going to sit out there for a while. I don't need to sign Calvin Ridley immediately, or I don't need to sign X, Y, and Z wide receiver immediately because there's going to be 7 first-round wide receivers. So each year is a case by case of how the free agent pool mixed with the draft pool. And when you get to use both resources, you can work at your highest level. But if you don't, and you sit here and say, I'm going to attack free agency the exact same way in 2024 that I did in 2014, how could you expect to be successful or take another leap? It's just, that's the part of it that is, I don't want to come in with the same cookie cutter plan every single year.
Life is a continually changing organism, Tony, to your exact point. Every draft class is different. Every free agency class is different. Sometimes you have a surprise situation with your team. You have a suspension. You have a retirement. You have absolutely no idea. You can plan and plan and plan and plan. And Danny, I think what we're upset about is the Cowboys are simply living by the beat of their own metronome. They are so unwilling to adjust to the speeds of the rest of the league. That's where I think, Chris, we would give the Eagles props. Again, did they overpay for Saquon Barkley? Absolutely. But they understood what the market is. They understand this all of the time. They understood it with the Jalen Hurts contract last year. They were the first to give him that. And then a day later, Lamar Jackson got a bigger deal. They got the Landon Dickerson deal done this week. What happened immediately after they did that? The guard market exploded. They understand where the league is at. They are constantly changing their plan. They have some core philosophies, Chris, that they obviously will do their best not to deviate from, but they're not afraid to deviate, to play the game so they can take advantage of what the new weakness is in the NFL, not the one, as Tony said, from 10 years ago.
No, I agree 100%. I think that the Philadelphia Eagles are playing this offseason really smart, in my opinion. And, I mean, if you look at the average per year salary, I know that is a lot for, Saquon Barkley and for any running back. But I mean, like, to Tony's point, this is a pretty weak running back class in comparison to previous years. And the Eagles needed a running back because DeAndre Swift, joined the Chicago Bears. And, the Philadelphia Eagles feel like they're in a position to contend. And I believe that that's, I think that that's a valid thing to think when, they've had the success that they've had recently. And I feel like the Cowboys should kind of have that same mindset when, there were only, 2 or 3 areas that really held the Cowboys back this past season. And that was their ability to score touchdowns in the red zone, which I think comes from not having a, great 50-50 ball wide receiver with Michael Gallup, not, I would say being in his prime anymore. And I'm not having a big power back in that backfield. And they struggled at defending the run at times. And, they had smaller linebackers, and they could have came into this offseason. And they could have addressed those things, and they could have, signed a Derrick Henry for only $8 million a year, which would have, fixed a huge issue for the Cowboys. And they could have, signed these other players, and they didn't do it. And like on top of that, they've also allowed a lot of their free agents to be signed in other places as well. So I just feel like the Cowboys are stepping backwards right now, while the rest of the NFC East is stepping forwards.
I don't think they're stepping backwards. I think they're just standing still. You know what I mean? Like they're fine, and they're saying, oh, well, our get off the line is really quick. And it's like, well, they might have a head start on you, and they're so unwilling to understand the change that provides. There's been a lot of talk in the chat about spinning forward. So this is a state on the score. Chris, 85 points. Danny in the caboose at 84. Tony, 86. But we have one final question left. And I'm not going to come back in time and hand you all points if you got it right. But we're going to name one thing you guarantee will happen between now and Friday afternoon. So it's up to each of you. I'm buying you time now as I kind of vamp here. So start thinking. It's up to each of you to go as bold or as shy as you want. You can do something like you think that they'll do nothing. You can say, I think Tyron Smith is back. You can say, I'm not going to take anything else that could be a would-be answer for you, but you can get really aggressive. You can be really sarcastic. Again, the canvas is completely blank. I am handing you, I don't know the name of the like wooden thing that the paint is on. I'm sure there's a name for that. Does anybody know the name for that? What that your thumb goes through? I'm sure somebody in the chat knows. Tony, I think you're an artist. Do you know? You know what I'm talking about, though, right? Like the thing that they hold in their hands that they dip the paintbrush in. Yeah, there's a name for that. I would appreciate it if somebody could help me out here, because I've vamped long enough to try to get an answer for that.
I'm still thinking of what Steve Carell's name was in 40-Year-Old Virgin.
I can't think about it either. So
well, don't get me started on another one.
Yeah. So Tony, you are in the lead. So you are in the most comfortable position. So I will give you the floor first. One thing, and just one, and you obviously can't copy each other. So one thing that you guarantee will happen. Oh, it's a palette. That's what Bubba said. Does that sound right? A palette?
That's not
yeah.
Right. A color palette.
I suppose that sounds correct. I don't know if that spelling is correct. P-A-L-E-T.
That's right. Give them the points.
Okay. Points to Bubba. Tony, Catalina, one thing you guarantee that the Dallas Cowboys will do between now and you have until Friday afternoon. Let's call it 5 p.m. Central.
How broad can I get with it?
It's up to you, man. The canvas is yours. The palette's in your hands.
I guarantee they will sign someone and they'll big it up like it's like, see, like we're not.
This was lame. Like we need specifics. Like
I'm trying to think.
I didn't know what you meant by big. Like you
Yeah.
can get as big as you want, but we need specifics. You can't be like, I think they sign a free agent. Like, I mean, come on, Tony.
All right.
So,
Well, is that a guarantee at this point? I guarantee they sign a running back at like a $3 million value and try to big it up like he's just fine. Like this is gonna work out. It's gonna be like a
Tony, we're gonna need a name. I'm sorry.
AJ Dillon. Dillon.
Pick the name. Is that the one you want to go with?
Sure. It's the least inspiring one I can think of. So yeah, AJ Dillon will be the guy they sign. Next thing you know, we'll have all these fan sites, doing highlight tapes of him, struggling through the line. And then, so yeah, I think AJ Dillon will be signed for, low ball number, and people will talk about, we should have got the other Packer that was available and we didn't. So that's my take.
I don't want to step on Chris or Danny's toes. A lot of people have suggested that Zeke could
that's
return.
what I was gonna do, yeah.
Well, no, you could do so. That's not what I'm going to say. But a lot of people have also thrown out J.K. Dobbins. That is the more I think about it, that is the classic Cowboys thing. Like, this guy really is an elite talent. He just hasn't been able to stay on the field, type thing. Like, this is why we're getting, a great value here. So Chris, you can go next. You can do the Zeke thing if you want, or you can do whatever else.
Yeah, I feel like it's not as exciting anymore, but my answer was that whole time going to be that they bring back Ezekiel Elliott, and that's going to be the Cowboys' power back move. and they're gonna get the fans all riled up and happy, and I feel like they're gonna play on the heartstrings of the fan base and try and win back the good graces, and that's what's gonna happen. So I think that Ezekiel Elliott is gonna be that running back who they bring back, and I don't think that it's gonna be a necessarily a needle mover for the Cowboys, but I think that Jerry will be really happy about it, and I'm sure it'll make Dak happy and it'll make a lot of the locker room happy. But I mean, it really wouldn't make I feel like it wouldn't really have me convinced that that's the move that needs to happen. But I do love Ezekiel Elliott, so I mean I do miss his presence in the locker room, but I don't know. I just think that makes a lot of sense for what the Cowboys would try and do in this situation, because they know that the fan base is kind of turning on them a little bit.
First of all, Ecuador Mon notes it was Andy, was Steve Carell's name in the 40-year-old virgin. So thank you. That was bothering all of us. I will guarantee within Chris's guarantee, if Zeke comes back, it will be on a 1-year deal. And one of the two, Dak or Zeke, will post the Last Dance thing on their Instagram story. Like I'm willing to guarantee as well. There are a lot of Tony, before we get to Danny, the Zeke thing, I think in a normal year would actually excite people. I think at least it would be 50-50. My own personal read, and you talked about this, is that maybe 80% of Cowboys fans would roll their eyes at this.
I think that's the first reaction. I think people would be actually genuinely annoyed by this, because if I'm correct, I think they still have like some dead cap on them on the book, so they'd be paying them twice to come back, and it's like people would be so
like a -$6 million in dead cap.
Yeah, and then whatever, they probably give him the vet minimum, and he'd still be on the books for like $7.5–8 million.
Can they restructure that dead money?
Yeah.
I think I predicted this last year. If they do bring him back, he'll wear number 15. Like that will 100% happen, and they will sell the Zeke 15 jerseys, and it will be this big old thing.
Well, 2021 might be available.
I guarantee you, somebody as we're talking about guarantees, somebody will believe if they don't resign Stephon Gilmore that's why, so that they could leave the number available for Zeke. There will be one person who believes that. So Danny, first off, do you think people would be mad, upset, roll their eyes, whatever, at the potential Zeke return? And second of all, your guarantee?
I think it'll be 50-50. I mean, people love Zeke, and people think it was a mistake to part ways with Zeke. So I
who really thinks this? Like, who actually believes this?
People, I mean, look at the Cowboys. They couldn't punch it in the goal line last year. And Zeke, if he was here, he would have fixed all of that. So people do think that. So, but I don't know. I think it'll be torn. I think a lot of people will be like, "Oh, are you kidding me? This is our running back signing." So I think it'll be split. So my prediction. So a couple things. First off, I'm giving two because I thought Chris was actually going to take this one because he reminded me of this. It's like Michael Gallup has not been released. So I expect that to happen real soon. I don't even know why it hasn't. So if I had to guarantee something, I would choose that, but I feel like that's cheating. So I'm going to take another one, and I'm going to say that the Cowboys will re-sign Jonathan Hankins for a $1.5 million deal. It's not going to make anybody happy, but it'll be something they do. He'll find that he probably couldn't make a whole lot more elsewhere. So why not come back? And I think they'll sign Hankins. So that if you're forcing me to pick something, I to guarantee something, I'm going to stick with the easier one. So those are my choices.
That will only piss people off because they won't care at all about Jonathan Hankins. They will say, like, if Mozzie Smith had been better, they wouldn't have to do this, and and they're relying on the draft, and their last first-round pick sucked, and so super inspiring. Does anybody want to ask me what my prediction is? Because I'm really excited to give it.
What's your prediction? Chris
got there first, so he gets the extra point. Mine's probably the most optimistic, surprisingly so, I think. I demand full credit if I get the first half wrong, if that makes sense. They will restructure somebody. My guess, though, for this purpose is going to be Trayvon Diggs. They will touch up Trayvon Diggs' deal. They will clear up some salary cap space, because at that point we'll be in the new league year. That hasn't been 100% necessary yet because books haven't had to be adjusted. But my guess is they touch up Trayvon Diggs' deal. And my full out guarantee as a result of it all, they bring back Tyron Smith. That's my official prediction. And they expect a parade. They expect a parade because they didn't let Tyron walk and all this stuff. And it will be objectively a very good thing that he is coming back. But they will act like they deserve the world for doing not even the bare minimum, like just for putting on pants, getting out of bed in the morning. But Danny,
I had a quick question because RJ's going to nail both his predictions, but I want to ask the other guys: are you going to be happy when they do that? That's the question I want to know. Are you going to be happy? Are you going to like the Tyron Smith deal?
I want Tyron Smith back. So yeah, I'm with that.
That's not the question. Are you
Yes,
gonna
I'd be-
are you gonna like the deal that they're
good
gonna
for
do?
Danny, holding y'all accountable.
the
Respect.
deal. Yeah, the deal is probably going to be tied to playing time. So will Tyron Smith like the deal? Because if he signs, that's all that matters. It sounds like he would like it. So yeah, I like the deal. I hope I already know if he's back, then I know I'm gonna like the deal. But with that being said, they're gonna parade it like, come on, man, did you ever doubt us? Did you ever think we'd let him go? Like, they'd pull some nonsense like that. So
And then they're gonna not draft the tackle in the first round.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
like
You lost me now. We can't.
Again, to Tony's point and to the overall point, in a tackle and wide receiver draft or deep draft, rich draft, they're gonna zag where everybody's zigging, and they're gonna zig into the running backs that are completely and totally shallow. Like this just has that smell, man. I'm sorry.
You know what? If
Chris,
CeeDee Lamb didn't happen, I would believe you. But no, that's not
just give my answer. While we were heading into free agency, I was kind of, not devastated by the Tyron Smith news that he may not be coming back. But at this point, it would be like the only positive news that the Cowboys have kind of given me at this point. So I feel like now, in hindsight, since we haven't been able to land, a lot of those free agents that I was interested in, that would be kind of, like somewhat of a makeup. But I mean, I do agree that it kind of is the bare minimum, and it's still not really, going out of its way and doing something crazy. But
it would feel a lot like this reference will be lost only on Tony Catalina because he doesn't believe in watching television. If Chris, I know you're a Friends fan, Danny, I believe you're a Friends fan. When both Monica and Chandler forget their anniversary, and Chandler goes and finds the mixtape, and he, it's an old thing that he repackages or whatever and gives to Monica, and she thinks it's like the sweetest thing ever. There will be a lot of Monicas in the Dallas Cowboys fan base that are like, oh my gosh, thank you so much, and that then use that to cape for the Joneses and act like, oh man, if they hadn't done what they did, Tyron wouldn't be back. Whereas all of us will be the fourth wall audience, knowing the kind of fraudulence behind the gift.
I will say this, and it may not just be the Tyron Smith thing, but I think that fourth wall is coming down because when the Cowboys start doing some things and some of these moves, people are going to be happy for, and I think fans are going to, just like they always do, start to think, you know what? All right, I like where this is going.
Oh, Danny, I don't think you deserve credit for predicting the people that are going to cope themselves into oblivion. Like I tweeted this earlier, there are 5 people on the Cowboys roster. I don't know them in my mind yet, but the people are going to talk themselves into have been being the right choice all along. You know what I'm saying? Like when Deuce Vaughn has an amazing cut at training camp, we're going to be like, I can't believe that, we were arguing for this team to go out and sign Josh Jacobs. Deuce Vaughn looks incredible. And we're going to fall too much in love then with players who shouldn't be given the roles and responsibilities that they're going to be given. Tony, I see you nodding.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best part about Oxnard. And there's going to be some receiver that won't make the team, will make a great grab. And you'll be like, oh, Calvin Ridley, who? You know what I mean? Like who needs, AD Mitchell? We got this guy here. So yeah.
Yeah. Why do you need AD Mitchell? Why do you need any of these guys when you have Simi Fehoko just, walking? I mean, Eric Joseph was amazing in training camp and had the first interception at training camp, and that really worked out. The Cowboys knew what they were doing when they traded up.
I want to clarify. I'm not just talking about what happens in the draft. I'm talking about through the whole free agency. I think people, and last year it was those trades. People were got really excited about things. I think there will be signings that people like, yeah, I like that. That's what I'm talking about. People will be happy with the free. They're not going to, right now they're coming with torches, but eventually the fire is going to snuff out of that. And people are going to, you can call it coping. And I do think probably part of it is that, but I actually think people will generally actually feel good about some of the moves the Cowboys do make.
What happens if at this point tomorrow the Cowboys still haven't signed any outside free agents? And
Good question, Chris.
I mean, how is the fan base going to react then?
They won't be happy. I mean, most of them, 10% of us will be fine. But
let me reframe Chris's question, because it's kind of been like a classic Mario Party, 3-on-1 game here tonight, Danny. I don't know if that references one you're down with, but what would it take for you to this weekend when you're doing something, mowing the yard, folding laundry, whatever, to in the back of your mind as you're putting down another brewski, say, I think those dudes may have been onto something. What would have to happen or not happen between now and the end of the week?
Who are you asking?
I'm asking you. You're the one with
Yeah,
the just down the brewski.
You want me to say what they would have to do for me to be happy?
No. I'm asking you what would have to happen for you to say, you know what, Chris, Tony.
Oh,
RJ,
you guys are on to something.
They had a point. Yeah.
Sorry, that didn't even enter my mind that was something I would.
That turned off on us. Wow, respect. I respect
no,
the
it's
game.
RJ. It's not going to be able to happen by the weekend. I mean, I don't know what it would take. It would take some more history of the Cowboys' approach not working. Like they suddenly weren't good at drafting, and they were just making. It's not. Yeah, there's not. I don't know that they can do anything that I'd be like, I don't know what they're doing, and those guys were right. Sorry, I don't got anything.
Flip side of that, and then we'll crown the winner. And we tweeted this out earlier this evening from the BTB handle. Chris, you can go first here. What would have to happen for you to be back? I mean, for you to whip up an Instagram post and just, be so hyped and so excited. Like what is the thing, the little bit that they need to get you in?
Cowboys would have to trade that second round pick for T. Higgins and get CeeDee Lamb a complimentary wide receiver too, which won't happen. But, go big and go bold. That would make me feel like an all-in type of move.
Okay. Respect on putting a legitimate answer on it. Tony, good luck topping that.
Yeah. I feel, I'm sorry for saying this, but legitimately nothing. Like I'm at the point now where I'm at like a pessimistic state. Like I'm at a show me, don't tell me. Like I want to be positive, but I'm so fatigued from every year saying this is our year and every year having that talk with like my friends say, man, like this feels good.
I got a quick question for Tony here, because that's pretty harsh. And I want to ask him, so since nothing would please him if the Cowboys did between now and Saturday, what would have pleased you? What could they have done that you would have been happy with in the last 2 days?
A philosophy, an approach, an aggressive.
No, a signing.
A signing. Bro, like I think that's been the whole time that's been confused between my side of it and your side of it is there wasn't a single person. It's a philosophy. It's an idea that like the only thing that we heard was that it was $4 million was too rich for their blood for Zach Moss. Like that's not the type of things I want to hear from a team who I think is close to a championship window. For them to sit here and say, yeah, we got the pieces in place, knowing that's not true. Like this team is not worthy, cannot win a Super Bowl championship as currently constructed. I don't care what anybody says. This team cannot win a Super Bowl championship. And I don't think that a draft this year is going to be able to put them over the top. So you have to go ahead and do free agency unless you're getting extremely lucky. Every single bounce falls your way. Like they just don't have the roster right now. So for me to sit here and say that, like, I'm going to all of a sudden be happy that day 4, they signed a fourth string linebacker. Like, no, I'm not going to sit here and do backflips about it. Like eventually I'm sure by July or August, I'll fool myself into believing that like there's some top dog and the Eagles can't mess with us, but like, it's not really rooted in reality.
I wanted you had the advantage of hindsight the last couple of days, and this is something I've challenged people on Twitter to do is show me your receipt where you wanted this guy and he would have made the difference.
Aaron Jones. I like Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones.
That's an equally empty, like, piece of ground to stand on that you've got, Danny, to be fair. Because your point is like, just trust, just it'll work out. Just, I don't know exactly how, but they're going to figure it out. So like, it's an equal point of ambiguity.
My wife wasn't even alive the last time this thing worked. Chris wasn't alive the last thing worked
either.
This is you're the whole free agency is ambiguous. You're gonna throw it.
The like side of the spectrum that you're on is like, oh, like it will be fine. We don't have to worry. Like we shouldn't even doubt them. Like we should completely and totally trust and fall in line. And I can't explain why or how this is gonna work, but if you give me, $5,000, I promise, like I'll return it twice on your investment. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So and I get. And that's where this argument gets silly. And that's why things like the roundtable are great, because we're allowed to contextualize it, because it's fair to ask Tony, hey, give me a name. And he gave you Aaron Jones, obviously, at the very end. But and we don't know, right? We don't know. Maybe the Cowboys came in shy. Maybe the Cowboys matched the offer to Aaron Jones and he simply turned them down. We do not know certain things, so we can't say anything with full and total authority. But what we can do, like you're doing in some respects, is go off of historical trends and go off of the way they have operated in the past. And that suggests that they have absolutely zero interest in trying to improve their team, unlike literally every team in the NFL right now.
They don't have zero interest. They just don't have the same interest that
as the entire NFL.
Well, that's, you know what, I don't know what to tell you. That's who they are. That's their approach. Fans don't like it, but you know what? I've seen what fans want to do, and I don't like that either. So I honestly, I'll just take my Cowboys approach and roll the dice with them. And I don't believe that we're stuck in purgatory. I think that if you keep going to the playoffs, you eventually it'll be your time. So I don't have any problems with the Cowboys and how they're putting things together. So I mean, that's
Tony,
just
I know you raised your hand, but we're not in purgatory. What we have is worse. Like we've been able to see the promised land through the window, right? Like we've just never been able to get out. Like purgatory doesn't even get on the tram to go see it. We've been, are you familiar with the movie The Island with Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson? Like we know what the island is. I know that's not. I mean, if you've seen the movie, it's really not
good movie.
Like,
good movie.
Yeah, it's a great, super underrated movie. I bet Tony hasn't seen it, but like we know what the island is like. We know we've experienced it. We're not just living with it as a figment of our imagination. So we're way worse off than purgatory. Tony, you raise your hand, then Chris, then we'll bounce. But Tony,
yeah, this is where I'll end. One thing is, we talked about this. I just don't understand why you want to play with one hand time behind your back, right? It's there to use as a resource. It doesn't mean you have to get silly and you have to do some crazy things. It's there for a resource to use. One, that's, one part. And I don't like oversimplifications, and I don't care about the stigma of, you signed on day one, so it's going to be a massive overpay. But when you take a step back and you literally look, not even just my opinion, factually look that 31 teams did something and you did absolutely nothing. Is that not like an eyebrow raising thing? I mean, maybe not to Danny, maybe not to some people, but just to literally step back and be like, oh, the Cowboys aren't going to be the fools. And then you're looking like, oh, wait, there was 31 fools then, and we're the only non-fool. Like, I don't understand how, just get in the game. And the funny thing is, knowing Cowboys, it would have been the Trent Sieg move would have been the one. And then they could have been like, look, we did something, but I don't know. It just, there's built up frustration. You hope it all works out. At the end of the day, we all want the Cowboys to win. You just feel like there's got to be something here. There's got to be something more.
Chris, take us home.
One thing I just want to say real quick, as you were talking about how the Cowboys can, see out the window and, see that, promised land. It's even worse because as Cowboys fans, we have to see our arch nemesis, get closer to that island than even the Cowboys have. And not only have they gotten closer, they've won it more recently than the Cowboys, and that's still not enough for them. They're still going all in, and they're still making the moves, and they're coming with different approaches every single offseason, with a different mindset, trying to, fix where they were wrong the previous season. I think that's the biggest pill to swallow. I think that's the toughest pill to swallow is that it's not just the fact that the Cowboys aren't doing what a lot of Cowboys fans feel like they have to do, but that the Eagles of all teams are really giving the best representation, in my opinion, of what teams should be doing in free agency. And I mean, I know that people disagree with that, and there's people who think that they've made some crazy decisions, but I mean, it's paid off for them. They won a Super Bowl, and they were in the NFC Championship game not too long ago, and they made the Super Bowl. I mean, yes, they lost, but they lost Patrick Mahomes. They've done more than the Cowboys have, and I think that there's a reason behind that.
Last question before we crown our winner. Tony, have you seen or heard of The Island with Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson?
No.
It took a long time.
Yeah.
I'm not shocked. I also believe who is I can't remember who else is in that movie, but it's excellent, Tony. I really highly
Buscemi's in it, I think.
You're right. Wow.
Maybe not the guy you're thinking of, though, or so the person you're thinking of. But it's been a long time since I've seen it. But I agree, very underrated movie.
All right, let's just get to it. Tonight's winner by 1 point, Chris Halling takes it home, 104. Tony Catalina at 103. Danny Phantom, the bronze medalist, with 102. Congratulations, Chris Halling. How do you feel? Who do you want to thank? Who do you hate? The floor is yours.
I feel good. I haven't, been on the roundtable, in a while, and I wanted to take initiative. I wanted to take more initiative to try and win than the Cowboys have taken initiative to sign free agents and win in free agency. Right. So, I'm glad, that I was able to come on and, share the stage with all you wonderful guys, even though, some of us think differently, but that's what's beautiful. And that we're all, cheering for the same team. And I'm excited to, be upset about more Cowboys decisions, throughout the week. But I mean, at least this will make me feel better throughout it, is knowing that I won the roundtable.
Tony, Kevin says that you were robbed. I think we get this all the time, Tony. I think you're paying off the chat, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, I'm slipping a fin here every once in a while to the fans.
Maybe watch a movie that might help you in your next candidacy. Danny, Kevin says that you were robbed. How does that make you feel?
No, I don't think so. I think I definitely don't think Tony was robbed. And I honestly think, I love you, Tony. I honestly, I will say, this isn't going to go well either. But I think I was expecting Chris to maybe a little bit embarrass himself, but I think he did a fantastic job tonight, and I think he was very composed. And and so props to him. And I'm actually, I was surprised I did as well as I did, to be quite honest. This is not usually when I get great reviews. I'm used to this part of the year, and I know how it goes. But hey, that's how it goes. I know how this ends, so I'm fine with things. But very good job by most of us.
Scott Ruggieri, I hope I'm getting that correctly. He says, shout out to Danny for fighting in a corner tonight. Also says, do we make a signing tomorrow? Yes or no? That's all you can say. Chris, you're the winner.
Yes.
Tony.
No.
Danny.
Yeah, we do.
I'm going to say yes, too. That means, Tony, you are the odd man out, and you get to send us home. So, Tony, please tell us all a movie you have seen that you think the three of us haven't.
There's no answer. There's no way.
This might take a while.
Donnie Brasco.
Haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it, actually.
Nope.
Oh, wow.
Let's
Good job, Tony. Good job.